There was a shooting in Jacksonville, Florida, at a Madden tournament. We have some video of the incident here. You don't get to see the actual shooting itself, but you hear the audio of it happening in the background. This is bone-chilling. Let's take a look and then we'll discuss.
Got a lot of good games going on.
It's a
today.
lot. It's going to be hard to get them on stream. It's a lot.
It's not a tough out today. Excuse me, not an easy out.
Oh, fuck, what are you shooting with? Oh. That was terrifying. That was disturbing. And at this point, unfortunately, it is utterly common. That's what that is at this point. I don't know about you guys, but when you can hear it, it hits home even harder when you can hear it. You could hear people screaming for their lives in the background. You could hear it. You could hear somebody with the realization that this may be their last couple moments on Earth. Putting all the numbers and the facts about gun violence aside, and for the record, I can ring all those off for you if you'd like to make the point. But from a sheerly human perspective, from a visceral perspective, I don't know how anybody can listen to that and act like, no, it's cool, we don't need to do anything at all in order to try to fix this scourge of gun violence in the U.S. You would have to be so deeply brainwashed to come to that conclusion. And hey, I've said it before, much to the dismay of some people in my audience. I don't think I'm far left on the issue of guns. I think I'm relatively moderate. I think basic reforms are, that's what I would do. I would do basic gun reforms. I would do 100% universal background checks. I would have strict standards where if there's a question as to whether or not you may do a shooting, if there's some sort of issue there, underlying issue, 100% I would not allow a gun to be sold to that person. And that is that would be the due process in the background check. Hey, is there anything that's a potential red flag? You can't get it. For people that do get a gun, I would say there would be a process. You would have to pass a test. It would be a lot more like driving. So you are being much more selective with who gets weapons. 100% I would do that. I would ban high-capacity magazines. I think that's a no-brainer. I think I would do some sort of gun buyback program where you give people an offer they can't refuse, so you get rid of a lot of the excess guns that are in circulation around the country. I wouldn't ban guns, but I would do common sense reforms. I don't think that these things are too much to ask for, and it's not a coincidence. The United States has more guns than every other developed country, and we also have the most gun violence. That's not a coincidence. It's just factually not correct to say more guns equals more peace. Well, we already have the most guns. So why are we not the most peaceful? If that position is true, more guns equals more peace because there's more good guys than bad guys, and then the bad guys will be cowered into submission because they know all the good guys have guns. This is what the NRA says. This is their argument. Well, if that were true, we would already have the most peaceful country and the least amount of gun violence, and we don't. And it always reminds me of that article from The Onion where it basically says, only country where this routinely happens. There's nothing we could do about this. That's what we're seeing here, man. That's what this is. And I feel terrible for everybody. By the way, 3 people died. And then 11 were injured. I feel terrible about this. And then also, we live in a country where after the shooting happens, let's say you survive the shooting, you get slapped with like a $10,000 or more medical bill. Even if you have insurance in many instances. That's the country we live in. Oh, congratulations, you survived an unhinged madman's rampage. That'll be $17,812. That's happened. That has happened in this country. It happens routinely. So it shows like political crisis after political crisis after political crisis. These giant, gaping, gangrenous wounds that we as a country are not addressing. That's what's happening right now. And it's just so upsetting, man. It really is. And, you know, the thing that perhaps is most disturbing is there are so many instances of these shootings where we know certain reforms would have prevented them. Now, let me be clear. It doesn't. If you do the gun reform, that doesn't mean there will be zero mass shootings. Of course, there are going to be people who slip through the cracks. Of course, there are going to be people who somehow get a gun on the black market. That happens. But will you tick down the overall number if you do gun reform? Yes. Yes. It's not about eliminating. It's about the macro picture and reducing it massively. Not everybody's going to have a connection to the black market to get an illegal gun if you do the proper gun reforms to prevent them from legally getting a gun. So this argument of like, well, if you make it a law, people who break the law wouldn't follow it anyway, so it's not going to do anything. That's not, by that logic, we wouldn't have laws against murder. People are going to break the murder law anyway, so why have murder laws in place? That's the same logic. People are going to break the gun laws anyway, so why have gun laws in place? Because overall, when you look at the macro picture, there will be fewer shootings if you have effective gun reform. And one that always comes to mind is the Dylan Roof example. If there was one more day in the background check, so if there was a waiting period, 72 hours, he wouldn't have been able to get that gun. He bought that gun legally. And there are other examples of this too. I think the Virginia Tech shooting, the guy had serious issues in his history and there wasn't an effective background check or something to that effect. There are a few examples of these shootings where specific reforms definitely would have prevented it. And, you know, there was another school one recently that I want to say maybe 4 or 5 months ago where we covered it on the show. And the dude is all over the internet saying, I am going to be the next mass shooter. I am going to massacre innocent people. Like almost quite literally saying that. And then he legally got a gun. So imagine the lives we could save if we just did a universal background check, a waiting period, and had a test in place for people to get guns. Just that alone. Just that alone. Just that. But no, we don't do that. And then we get bone-chilling videos like this, man, of people. We just heard the last seconds of somebody's life there. And if that doesn't affect you, I don't know what will. Does it have to be somebody in your family for you to acknowledge what's going on here and to want to fix it? And you know what? I shouldn't even have this condescending tone I have because people already agree. I'm acting like what I'm saying is controversial. It's not even close to controversial. Look at the polls. Look at the polls. Every time they've done a poll on gun reform, the numbers keep ticking more and more in the direction of do the reform. And all the specific ones you can name are now a majority of Americans who support it. Even a majority of NRA members support a bunch of new gun reforms. NRA members. It's just the leadership of the NRA that refuses to hop on board because they're taking money from gun manufacturers and they give money to the politicians and the politicians do the bidding of the gun manufacturers. So in other words, the last people in the country who should control gun policy are the ones who are controlling it. The people who sell the guns, who make money from gun sales. They're the people who decide, hey, you shouldn't restrict any sales at all. Unbelievable. But that is a scary, scary video. And if it impacts you like it impacted me, then you're going to want to see change. And as a final point, listen, there are going to be a bunch of idiots who come out and blame video games for this. Nothing could be further from the truth. So, first of all, they're playing Madden. That is not a first-person shooter game. Second of all, even if it was a first-person shooter game, these are the victims of the crime. These are not the people who perpetrated it. And then also, there have been a bunch of giant studies on this issue. Giant studies. And you know what they found? There's no link whatsoever between violent video games and mass shootings. Every other developed country has violent video games as well, and they don't have the mass shootings we have. So that means there is no link Violent video games do not cause mass shootings. Violent movies do not cause mass shootings. People understand the difference between reality and non-reality. So that is just nothing but a cop-out. That's obfuscating from the real problem, and I think everybody needs to recognize that.